how do we become more self-aware? As we think of our lives and as we think of the struggles that we're having in our lives, this idea of emotional intelligence keeps coming up over and over again. And one of the key components of that is this idea of self-awareness. What we'd like to do today is talk to you about this idea of self-awareness from the lens of a tool called 4 lenses. And in those lenses, there are 4 basic distinct personality types. And we're going to cover each one of those in separate videos. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the orange temperament and what makes up that temperament, what are the key attributes associated with the temperament, and that you can then begin to either, if you happen to have that as your temperament, or you know someone that does, you can use this knowledge to be able to help you to be more effective as you move forward in your relationships. So as we begin our process, we need to look at, there's 10 categories that we've identified that make up each of these different temperaments. So we're going to go to each of those in a little in depth with you so that you can have a better understanding and make an assessment on your own or those around you. So let's get started. So to understand the oranges at a deeper level, let's talk about some of the key attributes and characteristics of an orange. First off, what do oranges value? One of the things that we know that oranges value is this ability to have freedom. The risk, their spontaneity is critical for them to have happiness in their lives. As they go through their lives and they value, one of the things that really is kind of upsetting to maybe some other of the temperaments is this desire they have for risk. I mean, as they're looking at life, there is nothing that they can't do. Just yesterday, a young man was giving a talk, and as I was listening to him, he talked about his rock climbing experience. He'd never been rock climbing before, where you just use your fingers and you climb up the side of a sheer cliff. And he just decided he could do it. And so he went out there with another gentleman who was an avid climber, and he just started up. And he says he got about halfway up and he realized that he was just freaking out. He just couldn't follow through with it. So the gentleman came up and he helped him and he went through it. The point is that being an orange, it didn't stop him from going out and attempting something that he just didn't know what to do. So that's how they value. They value those kinds of things that really make their life interesting and exciting. Second is this ability to communicate. And how do you communicate to an orange? They're not very good at just sitting around and waiting to have a conversation. They need to be engaged. The conversation needs to be lively. It needs to be exciting. It needs to be able to have some aspect where they can see themselves doing something in that communication. And so as you want to understand the orange and really work with the orange, you need to learn how they communicate and be able to communicate in ways that they will listen. It's like a foreign language to them if you're talking in ways that doesn't meet their need from a communication perspective. Something else that's interesting about the orange from a communication perspective is that they like to stir the pot. They'll be in a conversation. If they're bored, they'll just throw out a joke. They'll just throw out some way to create an argument. So it creates something different for them. And so just know that about oranges, that as they do that, as my wife, we have this look. And we're sitting in a meeting, and if she just looks and gives me this look then I just know this isn't the right time to have that kind of conversation right here. So I've learned, we call that maturity. Over the last 40 years, my wife's been pretty good at being able to help me to become a better communicator. Work is another category. Oranges need a job that they can have fun at, they can enjoy, that they can be engaged in. They need excitement, they need motivation, even in the workplace, an external motivation. You know, there are some temperaments that are internally motivated, not the oranges when it comes to work. They have to have some reason for existence. Give them a challenge, they'll love it. Give them something no one else has been able to figure out, they'll figure it out. But when it comes to work, you just need to understand that putting them into a job where you're going to sit in a chair and punch numbers in a computer all day long, forget it. It isn't going to happen. What's interesting about the oranges from a leadership perspective is they actually believe that they are great leaders. Because in a real sense, I like the term, they're legends in their own minds. They're way, way bigger than they, in their minds, of what they really are and who they really are. They're action-oriented, again, as a leader. If you're working with somebody that is a high orange as their leader, it'll never be a dull moment. There'll always be excitement. We'll always be moving. Maybe not moving in the right direction, but we'll always be moving. And that's one of the great things about oranges from a leadership perspective. People love following the orange though because they are so charismatic and they are really, really good at what they do. In fact, you know, as you think of presidents of the United States, there's really only been two major kinds of presidents in the United States. Maybe three occasionally, but oranges are predominantly one of the top individuals that run for president come out of the orange category. So far as we've been going through these, have any of these rang true to you? Or do you know somebody that they do ring true to? If you do, we'd like to be able to hear what's your experience in dealing with somebody or being an orange and dealing in the world today. So just to continue on, the last few things about oranges that recreation-wise, again, it all follows the same pattern. It needs to be fun, it needs to be engaging. They engage in a lot of almost scary kinds of things, right? You know, racing fast cars, jumping off of cliffs, bungee jumping. It's things that most of us would sit there and go, there's no way in the world I'm doing that. Not an orange. They go after and they try any kinds of things that is like an adrenaline rush. Just the last few things that we'll talk about here to wrap this up has to do with their childhood, youth, and education. It kind of all plays out. Orange children have the toughest time in the education system. So from a school perspective, because most schools are developed in a very high gold prospect. If you want to know more about the gold, along with the orange, click down below and take our free assessment, and you can get a better understanding of all four of these temperaments. But let's get back to this, that from an education perspective, they need to be interactive. It needs to be engaging. They're smart humans, but they really do get a bad rap in the education system because they just don't conform. So whether it's in their childhood or as a youth, parents struggle with orange kids if you happen to not have an orange preference, because they are definitely unique and they don't like to listen. You talk about the terrible twos, that's kind of the life of an orange their whole life. And so just kind of know that about the orange. And I should say a low mature orange. Again, we can learn more about that in one of our other videos that we've created about maturity. Before our last card, I just want to make sure we're clear. Although it sounds like the oranges are kind of these off the wall and just kind of going everywhere, being self-aware of who you are and how you can mature changes the whole dynamic of who you are as a human being. All of these temperaments, operating from a low mature perspective, run into lots of problems. Oranges running from a low mature perspective, you run into a lot of the issues that we talked about. From a high mature perspective, they're amazing team members. They're amazing family members. And so oranges, the last conversation that we'll have is how to love. How do oranges love? And I'll tell you this about the orange, like they are in everything else. When it comes to love, they're all in. There's no questions asked. They just jump in feet first, and they're all in from the minute they start until whenever the relationship's over with. So those are the great things about an orange, the excitement about an orange, the motivation of an orange, some of the ways to communicate. And as you want to know more and learn more about the orange temperament and how self-awareness plays out in increasing your effectiveness as a human, then please subscribe to our channel and learn more about this temperament and the other temperaments that we are involved in. So if you enjoyed this conversation, then tune in to our next video that we'll be talking about the blue temperament and all of the wonderful things that they bring to the world. I'm excited to introduce you to the oranges and help us to understand humans so that we can help put the human back into humanity.